ridiculous imitation of a beat. You don't know. Okay, then why don't you sing? Then why don't you sing? You'll be much better. Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashoda Biyolu Kala Davamanam Param Rishnam Matyam Tato Druta Gopya Rudanta Muhur Netra Yugmam Rijantam Karamboja Yugmena Satanka Netram Muhushvasakam patrire kankakanta Stita graiva damodaram bhakti badham Iti driksvalilabhir ananda kunde Swagosham nimajantam akyapayantam Tadiyeshitagyeshu bhaktarjitatvam Puna prematastam sitavritti vande Param deva moksham na mokshavadim va na chanyam vrineham vareshadapiha Idam teva purnata gopala balam sada me manasya virastam kim manyai Idam te mukham bojam atyanta nilair Vritam kuntalai snigdha raktaischa gopya Muhushchumbitam bimbarakdadharang me manasya virastam malam lakshalabhai Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukkha Jalabdi Magna Vadamodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukkha Jalabdi Magnam Kripa Drishti Vrishjati Dinang Bhatanu Grihanesha Mam Agyam Edakshi Drishya Kuver Atmajo Badha Murtaiva Yadvat Traya Mochito Bhakti Bhajo Kritocha Tata Prema Bhaktim Swakam Me Prayacha No Mokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha Namaste Studamne Spuradipti Damne Tvadiyodarayata Vishwasya Damne Namaste Studamne Spuradipti Damne Tvadiyodarayata Vishwasya Damne Namaste Studamne Spuradipti Damne Tvadiyodarayata Vishwasya Damne Namo Radhikayai Tvadiya Priyayai Namo Nandalilaya Devaya Tubhyam Namo Radhikayai Tvadiya Priyayai Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam Namo Radhikayai Tvadiya Priyayai Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam Namam Ishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashodam Biyolukala Davamanam Prasam Ristam Matyam Tato Drutya Gopya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara, Radhe. Jaya Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara, Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki We don't read the translations? Oh, that's okay. To the Supreme Controller, who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, whose glistening earrings swing to and fro, who manifested himself in Gokula, who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and who then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat, in fear of Mother Yashoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord Sri Damodar, I offer my humble obeisances.
Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna's babyhood drowned the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. To the devotees who are attracted only to his majestic aspects of Narayana in Vaikuntha, the Lord here reveals, I am conquered and overwhelmed by pure loving devotion. To the Supreme Lord Damodar, my obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times.
O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benediction, I do not pray to you for liberation, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes may constantly appear in my mind. O Lord, I do not even want to know your feature as Paramatma. I simply wish that your childhood pastimes may ever be enacted in my heart.
O Lord, the cheeks of your blackish lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, have become reddened like bimba fruit due to Mother Jashoda's kisses. What more can I describe than this? Millions of opulences are of no use to me, but may this vision constantly remain in my mind.
O unlimited Vishnu, O Master, O Lord, be pleased upon me. I'm drowning in an ocean of sorrow and almost like a dead man. Please shower the rain of mercy on me. Uplift me and protect me with your nectarian vision.
O Lord Damodara, in your form as a baby, Mother Yashoda bound you to a grinding stone with rope for tying cows. You then freed the sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Anakuvara, who were cursed to stand as trees, and you gave them the chance to become your devotees. Please bless me in the same way. I have no desire for liberation into your effulgence.
O Lord, the entire universe was created by Lord Brahma, who was born from your abdomen, which was bound with rope by Mother Yashoda. This rope I offer my humble obeisances. I offer my obeisances to your most beloved Radharani and to your unlimited pastimes. Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai.
Jaya Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Sodanandana Vrajajannaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jayam Vishnupad Pranamahamsa Parivrajakacarya Shatarashatashi Shri Madhasavan Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Rajagrantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Nitai Go Premanandi All glories to the Samandavaris, all glories to the Samandavaris, all glories to the Samandavaris, all glories to Shri Shukranga Gauranga. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ata Niryaya Salilat Rachetasa Udvanvataha Vikshya Kupyan Drumaishchanam Gam Gam Rodhum Uvoch Tritai Ata Niryaya Salilat Rachetasa Udvanvata Vikshya Kupyan Drumaishchanam Gam gam rodhum u voch tritai. Chaniraya salilat. Jita saudmanvataha. Vikshya kupyandrameshchanam. Gam gam rodhum voch tritai. Atanuraya salilat. Jita saudmanvataha. Yashakupyandrameshchanam. Mothers, Ata, thereafter, Niryaya, after coming out, Salilat, from the water, Prachetasaha, all the Prachetas, Udvanvata, of the sea, Vikshya, having observed, Akupyan, became very angry, Drumai, by trees, Channam, covered, Gam, the world, Gam, the heavenly planets, Rodhum, to obstruct, Iva, as if, Utritai, very tall. Translation, purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, thereafter all the Prachetas emerged from the waters of the sea. They then saw that all the trees on the land had grown very tall, as if to obstruct the path to the heavenly planets. These trees had covered the entire surface of the world. At this time, the Prachetas became very angry. Purport, King Prachinabarhishat left his kingdom before his sons arrived after their execution of penance and austerity. The sons, the Prachetas, were ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come out of the water and go to the kingdom of their father in order to take care of that kingdom. However, when they came out, they saw that everything had been neglected due to the king's absence. They first observed that food grains were not being produced and that there was no agricultural activities. Indeed, the surface of the world was practically covered by very tall trees. It seemed as though the trees were determined to stop people from going into outer space to reach the heavenly planets. The Prachetas became very angry when they saw the surface of the globe covered in this way. They desired that the land be cleared for crops. It is said, it is not a fact that jungles and trees attract clouds and rain, because we find rainfall over the sea. Human beings can inhabit any place on the surface of the earth by clearing jungles and converting land for agricultural purposes. People can keep cows and all economic problems can be solved in that way. One need only work to produce grains and take care of the cows. The wood found in the jungles may be used for constructing cottages. In this way, the economic problem of humanity can be solved. At the present moment, there are many vacant lands throughout the world, and if they are properly utilized, there will be no scarcity of food. As far as rain is concerned, it is the performance of yajna that attracts rain. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 14, Anat bhavanti bhutani parjanya anasambhavaha. Jagna bhavati parjanyo jagna karma samudbhavaha. Quote, all living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yagna, sacrifice. And yagna is born of prescribed duties. By performing sacrifice, man will have sufficient rainfall and crops. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Agyantamirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumudithamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanamano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanch Kalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyarevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. So the Prachetas, after hearing from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and receiving benedictions from Him, they come out of the water to execute the order of the Lord, which was to go and give protection to the kingdom left by their father, King Prachinabarhishat. So the first point that's interesting to note is that King Prachinabarhishat, after hearing from Srila Narada Muni, he was invited by Narada Muni to perfect his life. There was a verse that came in the previous chapter that said Narada Muni invited him to Siddhaloka, apparently, which is a place where Narada resides primarily, to perfect his life. And instead of hesitating, thinking that he had so many duties to perform, he immediately left, taking that invitation, leaving only some, maybe like a piece of paper with some instructions for the Prachetas, how to take care of a kingdom. And then he left to fulfill his responsibility of self-realization without being overly concerned and bewildered about the so many duties that he actually has to a kingdom. One may think that it was irresponsible to prematurely leave the kingdom before the sons had arrived to actually take the responsibility and then receive proper instructions for its maintenance. But King Prachinabarhishat saw that the necessity of self-realization was paramount and superseded all other so-called duties of the human being. It is, so of course, one can easily misunderstand that point because the idea here is that after hearing from Narada Muni, he was completely convinced of the responsibility for self-realization. Generally, the reason why it may not be advisable for us to immediately abandon our so-called duties, many of them are just kind of self-created anyway, our so-called duties for full-blown pursuit of the path of Krishna consciousness is because we may not actually be convinced of its superlative necessity. Rather, spiritual life is like another aspect of social development. And therefore, it's not encouraged from one to kind of, let's say, abandon the so-called duties of the material world because one is not convinced of spiritual life, the actual substance. Rather, what happens on the material platform is one is repeatedly frustrated, and out of frustration, one may abandon his duties. But that frustration is not spiritual. That frustration is on the material platform. And therefore, being on the material platform, when there's opportunity for enjoyment, the living entity will again pursue it, because it's a Bhoga Tyaga program. So because the tendency of the conditioned soul from time immemorial has been Bhoga Tyaga, so it is not generally encouraged that one should just leave their responsibilities and come. Because what is your purpose for leaving? Well, what is your understanding? Well, I don't like my wife and kids. That is not the proper understanding. Or, I don't like my job, or my school was frustrating, this, that, and other. If that's the platform for which you're joining or pursuing, then that may not be the proper motivation. But at the same time, it's not necessarily the fact that a person can't understand, even in their youth, of the superlative necessity of spiritual life also. Generally, it may be kind of like presupposed that if you're young, you're not going to get it. And therefore, you won't, you're pursuing spiritual life full on. It was an act of irresponsibility. But that is not true. We can see Prahlad Maharaj preached to his friends, they got it, and they were 5 years old. And this is not an uncommon affair. Srila Prabhupada preached to the hippies. And, they got it, at least some of them to some degree got it, and they pursued Krishna consciousness fully. Maharaj Anga, when we heard earlier in the 4th canto, Maharaj Anga had a useless son, Vena, who was just demon number 1. And seeing the situation, seeing that he was not able to uplift them spiritually, and therefore they actually posed a threat to the development of self-realization, he also kind of just abandoned ship and went for self-realization. So the message isn't necessarily abandon ship, but the message is the topmost duty of the human being is self-realization. That's the most important duty. And if other duties will be blocking that pursuit, then they are fit to be abandoned. The principle of in the devotional service, anukuyena sankalpa, pratikuyena varjana, one should accept that which is favorable for the development of Krishna consciousness and reject that which is unfavorable for the development of Krishna consciousness. So if it can be seen that so many duties, most of which are self-created either by ourselves or by those we consider near and dear to us, like family, etc., if they shall impede the actual development of our Krishna consciousness, then those duties are fit to be abandoned. And there's no fault in that, even though because most persons are not actually interested in the real pursuit of life, they may criticize such a courageous action and therefore try to create doubt in the mind of the sincere person who's trying to pursue Krishna consciousness full on. Of course, we may say as an operative principle that discussion about these things with persons who are spiritually way more advanced than us is necessary to authenticate our understanding of why we want to pursue the path of Krishna consciousness. It may not be so clear. We may, after hearing the importance of self-realization, self-deceive ourselves to thinking, yeah, that's what I really want to do. But what's really going on underneath the surface is, I don't like this thing over here, so I really want to do this. So there might need some discussion to try to bring to the surface the real motivation. But at least we can understand here from King Prachina Barishat's example, which Prabhupada is commenting on in the first sentences of the purport, that once he heard from Narada, he could understand with clarity that self-realization is the most important thing, and nothing should, it cannot wait. That responsibility cannot wait for this duty and that duty and this duty and that duty, and then you're like 95 years old before you actually consider taking it up in a serious sort of way. That is not to be done. Rather, as soon as one can understand its highest importance, then one should pursue it full on. And even if so-called family and friends and near and dear ones shall discourage us by encouraging us and maintaining our so-called duties on the material platform, then we should reject that, with all humility at our command, saying that this is not Krishna consciousness. This is not the goal of Krishna consciousness. There will always be some unfinished duties. Prabhupada said this thing. There will always be some unfinished duties. You'll be 75 years old still perceiving so many duties to be fulfilled. There will always be some unfinished duties. So our business is not to go on and on and on and on trying to find out there's so many unfinished duties, but to understand the most important duty in the human form of life, which is actually the development of Krishna consciousness. And once we have understood that, we've been convinced of that, that's the main point, then it cannot wait. Such a responsibility cannot wait for getting the college degree, getting married, getting family members, and it cannot wait. Once one has actually understood it. But because we may not have understood, so many duties are there. Why? Just to purify our hearts, to bring us to the point of being convinced that actually the real thing is self-realization. After going through so much of the Puna Charvita Charvananam program, going to school, getting a job, this is Puna Charvita Charvananam, chewing that which has already been chewed. We've already done that for so many lifetimes. Why is that program there? To bring us to the point of realizing actually the real thing that we should be doing is pursuing Krishna. That is the real thing. Not pursuing husband and wife. That is not the real thing. In the name of wholesome Krishna conscious development. Pursuing wife, pursuing husband, coming to the temple for that purpose. This is sheer foolishness. The real responsibility is self-realization. So King Prachina Barishat understood that. He left a little note for his kids, protect the kingdom, and then, as we say in the modern language, he bounced. He left that situation immediately and went and perfected his life. And he's glorified in the Bhagavatam for such activity. So are many others, Maharaj Anga. So never be discouraged. Even if near and dear ones are discouraging us, we should never be discouraged that we've decided to dedicate our full energy to Krishna. That is never a mistake. I read the letter last time, Srila Prabhupada, many young men joining. That is never a mistake. And even if so-called family and all these things shall discourage us, we are not to consider their plight very seriously. Although we may humbly and respectfully hear them out externally, but internally we keep our eye on the prize of spiritual development. So then this second point here is after the Prachetas came out of the water, they noticed that the whole land was covered by many tall trees. Many, many tall trees. And it was as if these trees had obstructed the path for the heavenly planets. That doesn't mean that they were so tall that you couldn't maneuver through them and then come to the heavenly planets. That was the first image that came in my mind when I thought of this. But actually what it means is that because the land was completely covered by trees, then there was no room for doing agriculture. This is the main point that's being brought up. On the most basic level, people survive on food grains. This is the most basic level. Even if someone's a meat eater, then the animals they eat survive on the land. So then cultivating the land is actually the most important thing. So and how is the land cultivated? By rain. You need rain. In conjunction with one's hard work on the land, rain is required. And where does rain come from? By chance? No, it comes from the performance of yajna. So seeing that, so in other words, basically what they became angry. It's mentioned here, akupyan, having observed the situation, they became angry. Angry at what? That basically yajna had been obstructed because of the land. In this way, they had obstructed people's ascent to the heavenly planets because they've obstructed the performance of yajna, the so many trees. The demigods are this is described by Prabhupada in this verse, the demigods are the various limbs of the Supreme Lord. And He has given them responsibility over the necessities in the material world. Like, what is a necessity? Is it an iPod or a MacBook? That is not a necessity. Or an iPhone. These are not necessities. Clean water is a necessity. Now you have to spend $5 on an Evian bottle or whatever, Dasani, like this, and for a necessity, which is just sheer foolishness. And then the rest of the time they're promoting unnecessary necessities. Of course, like nowadays, we don't have a computer, right? We don't understand how we're going to survive. If I don't have Gmail, then what am I going to do with my life? If I don't have Facebook, many devotees asked me, they said that their Facebook was impeding their sadhana, so what should I do? So I said, why don't you close it down? Close down Facebook? Is there any other? That doesn't touch my heart, like Dhruva Maharaj, That instruction doesn't touch my heart. Is there any practical instruction you can give me, for my practical development? Like these are so many unnecessary necessities going on in the material world. And the actual necessities of life, people are totally negligent about, like water. I remember being at DePaul University and we were trying yoga out. I'll never do it again. That's a personal thing. I'm not trying to criticize that, but we were doing yoga, trying to yoga bridge preaching idea. And so one girl was coming to the yoga classes, and after the class, the yoga teacher, she was a devotee, she told everyone to make sure they drink sufficient water so that the toxins can come out of the body, etc. So the girl said, I never drink water. So I was like, well, what do you drink? She said, Pepsi. So this is going on. This is going on. We are so ignorant of the actual necessities of life. We don't even know what food to eat to keep ourselves healthy. We're eating all types of foolish things. And just because it says organic on the bottle, we say, yeah, this one is healthy. It's like pure sugar. Someone got you get these nice fresh juices. They say 100% all natural. You look at the ingredients, it's like all chemicals, 100% all chemical. And then, of course, they advertise it as natural. Anyway, so we don't even know what is actual necessity. But the real necessity of life, clean air, water, and so many minerals in the earth, etc. And all these things are being governed by the demigods. So in order to see to the surplus of these natural resources for our actual survival, even on the material platform, there needs to be worship of the demigods, minimally. Worship of the demigods, because they've been given that responsibility. And so how the demigods worship? They're worshipped by performance of yajna. And then they will supply the various necessities of human life profusely. And when yajna is stopped, then that is called as adidaivika klesha, right? Adidaivika klesha means what? It means the misery is given by the devatas. Adidaivita, deva means devas. So it means misery is given by the devas. Why are they giving miseries? Because there's non-performance of yajna. So the trees had covered the land and basically stopped the performance of yajna, so people won't be able to ascend to Swargaloka. On the most basic level, if the performance of yajna isn't there, they won't get the necessities of their life or even surviving on the material platform. How you said, the chapati problem. That problem won't be covered. So therefore, being very angry, they're responsible persons, they're great souls. So their anger should not be understood in the mundane sort of sense. Oh, they got angry at so many trees, and they just wanted to exert their power of austerity, etc. But rather, as responsible kings, they were seeing that the living entities are in a dangerous situation. Aside from the fact that they won't be able to get their basic necessities of life, but also there won't be development of the consciousness without performance of yajna. There won't be progressive life. Particularly, Prabhupada points out that the protection that needs to be given is the establishment of Varnashram. In the context of the note that King Prachinabharishat left, give protection means to establish Varnashram, which practically means what, though? To establish the cooperative effort for the worship of the Supreme Lord. Now, because the worship of the Supreme Lord requires cooperative effort, it is not a one-man show. It doesn't depend just upon Brahmanas, just upon Kshatriyas, just upon Vaishyas or Shudras. It depends on cooperative effort. So establish Varnashram was the purpose of the cooperative effort for working together for progressively pursuing self-realization from the place where we're actually standing in our consciousness development. So saying that thing will be stopped, this is the greatest concern of any leader, that the consciousness will not be able to progress spiritually on even the smallest level. So although there's concern, it says the first thing they notice is that the living entities won't get grains and so on. But underlying that is that aside from that, how they will advance spiritually without the execution of yajna. So therefore, being very angry, they're going to give expression to that anger coming up by removing the trees from the surface of the planet until they're stopped by Lord Brahma. So good leadership means not to be only so concerned about the chapati problem. Oh, they don't have sufficient foodstuffs to eat. In any Hare Krishna temple, that is hardly a problem. But the real, at least in Chicago, it is definitely not a problem. Rather, we're feeding so many others, what to speak of. One student was telling me last year at Northwestern, oh, your people are like parasites, so irresponsible, escapism. I said, well, why you should be envious of us? Come join us. We have plenty of room in ashram. And I said, we only require you follow 4 regular principles and rise for the morning program and come to the evening program. Can you do it? You would not do it for 3 days also. It's not possible for you. You're not able to do. And then, there was another point I was wanting to make in relationship to that. Anyway, so the point I'm establishing is that any good leader will see to the not that the chapati problem is solved, but rather how the yajna is going on, which is the source of all auspiciousness both on the material platform and the spiritual platform. So in the age of Kali, the only yajna that can actually really be performed in the age of Kali in any proper way is the Sankirtan yajna. even if one is chanting Hare Krishna offensively, that can solve the Chapati problem, according to our acharyas. That even if one chants the holy name offensively, the Chapati problem can be solved. So minimally, good leadership has to see to the execution of the Nama Yagna, as we say, in the age of Kali. Otherwise, all inauspiciousness will begin to creep in and destroy everything. So that's my discussion. Anyone wants to say anything?
Hare Krishna. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the nature of suffering and how it juxtaposes our blissful nature, because I was thinking how before we come to Krishna consciousness, we undergo a lot of suffering, but because we're so covered, we don't realize we're suffering. Then we make the commitment to come to spiritual life, and then once we come here, we get a little comfortable, and we maybe forget where we've come from, and so we're not able to sometimes get the necessary enthusiasm to continue advancing in spiritual life because we forget where we come from. We don't meditate so much on the fact that we're supposed to be, blissful living entities, and so we're not able to, even though we've come to spiritual life, we're not able to make advancement.
Well, your point is that because of comfort, someone is not able to advance. They are forgetful of the suffering conditions from which they've come. They've come to spiritual life, things are very comfortable, and therefore the necessity to advance becomes more or less blocked from their vision, and they just kind of, become do the prescribed austerities. The purpose of austerity is to make us perceptive of the situation that we're in. Austerity in general, but prescribed austerity. Don't concoct austerities. Fasting for weeks together and all these things is sheer illusions, foolishness. But the prescribed austerity makes a person perceptive. Like for example, rising from Mangalarti, you become perceptive. Material nature sucks. Especially when you feel tired and all these things. For example, if you get suppose we go to sleep at 11 o'clock because we had a late night cleaning or something, and then next morning you got to rise from Mangalarti, you can realize. And even if you don't go, like this morning I didn't go, I was too tired. I physically just didn't have any energy. You suffer another way, that everyone went and you didn't go. In that way, prescribed austerity makes a person perceptive. So as it's mentioned, the austerity is the wealth of the Brahmana. We're supposed to be like Brahmanas in training. And so when austerity decreases, then the senses become more powerful. And once the senses are very strongly relating to their sense objects, then vision of the reality of the material nature is obstructed. Practically speaking, the reason living entities have a hard time appreciating the suffering in the material world is because of sense gratification. Especially nowadays, the sense gratification is so intense that, even the sense gratification they're doing is causing them suffering. Like anything, they don't even perceive it because the senses are so uncontrolled. So austerity helps us to check the movements of the senses, and that allows the senses to perceive the reality of the material nature. Just like when you're in the mode of passion, you're eating spicy foods that's really causing suffering to the body. It burns going in, it burns coming out, but you don't even notice it, because it's just mode of passion. But then when you perform prescribed austerity and you move yourself to the mode of goodness, as soon as you put something in your body that's not favorable, immediately you notice it. I shouldn't have ate that thing. This is not proper. But when you're so much in the mode of passion, and what to speak of ignorance, you're just totally unconscious. When you're even in passion, when you do something like that, you don't even notice it because you're so much in passion. So by prescribed austerity, one comes to the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, one gains greater perception. Of course, as the devotional point is, one has to maintain a strong program of hearing, because it is basically hearing that allows us to perceive everything and appreciate everything in reality. Austerity helps us to hear also effectively. It helps. It's not the essence, but it helps. Most important thing in hearing is relationship. We've heard these points before, but austerity helps. So if a person's hearing goes down, immediately he'll become covered. imperceptibly, like catching tuberculosis. I often give this example. Tuberculosis, someone just sneezes in the room, and you just mind your own business, and then the next day you got tuberculosis because it's very contagious. So the material nature is very contaminating, and imperceptibly covers the living entity. So if we don't counteract the strong current of ignorance with a similarly strong program of bhakti yoga, tirena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, then you get covered over, comfortable like that. This is going on. Like that, hearing services, and many things can be said. Does anyone else want to ask anything? Say anything? Yeah, Robert wants to ask
something. What exactly do you mean by austerity?
Austerity means voluntarily accepting suffering for a higher cause. This is generally the definition that was given for austerity. So there's two things: voluntary accepting of suffering or forced acceptance of suffering. And we're quite familiar with the latter. Forced acceptance of suffering. So in voluntary acceptance, the suffering and the voluntary acceptance of suffering means something like, for example, I gave the example of rising early in the morning. Who wants to do it? We rather feel it a great suffering, especially if someone wakes us up. Then we feel very angry at that person, and the body doesn't want to do it, and so on. But you voluntarily accept the suffering. Why? There's a higher cause. What is the higher cause? Worship of the Supreme Lord happens at 4:30 in the morning. And this is way more important than my sleeping, a couple extra hours and dreaming of illicit activities. It's more important to rise early in the morning and worship the Supreme Lord, much more beneficial. So then, the mind perceives it as a suffering to rise early in the morning, to take bath. It's so cold, you don't want to take bath in the morning. Or if you take bath, you take a hot bath for 25 minutes, not wanting to come out. This is not austere, by the way. It's another sense of enjoyment. So you accept these things that you don't want to do because there's a higher mission to be fulfilled. Like that. This is called an austerity. Depriving the senses of the things which makes it feel very good for a higher purpose. So one may like intoxication. Intoxication is very nice. I get a little, tweaking feeling. I don't know, so many terms are there. But then I deprive my senses of that particular enjoyment. Why? Because there's a higher mission to be fulfilled. And although it's a little bit tough to pursue the higher mission, I'm going to perform the austerity, resisting that which is enjoyable because there's a higher mission to be fulfilled. This is called austerity. So a human form of life is meant for austerity. Otherwise, if we enjoy it like the animals, then how are we different from animals? We pride ourselves for being more advanced, but how are we more advanced than the hogs and dogs eating stool if we can't resist things for a higher mission? Like that. Okay, anything else, Acharya? You wanted to say something?
Thanks, Prabhu. I was really appreciating the beginning points you're making about the king giving up all these so-called duties. And I was wondering if you could expand a little more, understanding the reasons we may have come to Krishna consciousness versus being convinced of the actual necessity of that, like understanding the higher purpose and gaining that faith. That principle, and as you explained, once that understanding comes, being able to take it full on. So my question, I don't know, it's kind of related actually today being Kartik and we have the Damodar pastime, but taking it full on, I mean, how does one get, it's kind of broad, but how does one get Krishna's mercy? Because we hear on one hand we're supposed to make the endeavor, but Krishna, it's up to Krishna to actually give that mercy. But it seems that as we try to take it up, we get into this kind of doership mentality, not feeling that dependency. Or on the other hand, sometimes we're feeling so dependent we're not making enough endeavor. So maybe you can explain, how do we balance?
Sound like you asked like 4 questions or something.
I tried to weave it into the class. That's why it was a little confusing.
Anyway, on the first point, Krishna describes 4 types of living entities that come to him. Those who are distressed, those who want material remuneration, those who are inquisitive, and those who are in search of knowledge of the absolute truth. And Krishna goes on to describe that all persons are great souls for whatever reason they come, because they come to me. They're great souls. Udara Sarva, he makes this point. They're Udara means they're broad-minded persons, great souls, Mahatmas like that, because they come to me. And then what Srila Prabhupada gives further elucidation on the purports is that for whatever reason a person comes to Krishna, then Krishna can give them the association of devotees by which they can gain further enlightenment. So that means they may have come for a lesser reason, like coming because you're distressed. It's a very base reason to come to spiritual life. Coming to spiritual life because I want money or some type of material prestige is a very base reason for coming. Being inquisitive is a little bit higher, and being in search of the knowledge of the absolute truth is the best reason for coming, which is very rare. So in any case, for whatever reason one comes, when they come to Krishna, because they're dealing with Krishna, Krishna can now provide them the association of devotees. This is Srila Prabhupada's commentary on this point. And in that association, they can gain further enlightenment. So through association of devotees, they have to come to the point of actually perceiving the real value of spiritual life. Until then, there cannot be much energy going in that direction. I was describing this yesterday at Naperville, that perception will determine the line of work that we pursue. Right? Whatever perception we have of reality will give rise to the line of action we're going to take up. Right? So if we don't perceive the value of something, then the senses won't pursue it, the mind won't pursue it, and therefore you don't get the feeling to do it very strongly. So in the association of devotees, it is described in the Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 26, that the devotees give real vision, whereas the sun only gives vision, and that too to the external eyes, and only when it arises in the sky. But the association of devotees give rise to divine vision, divine conceptions, like that. So when that shall actually take place or take root in the person's heart, then that time he will be able to pursue with full strength. Otherwise, until then, because of lack of appreciation of the real substantial value of spiritual life, so then there's the gradual program of, take up various responsibilities to gradually purify our heart until we gain that realization. If one tries to, be full-blown without actual realization of the real value of spiritual life, how long can it last? He'll wither out in a very quick time. So then that seems like to be the first part of your question, from what I can understand. And then the combination of endeavor and mercy means that unless someone is showing a lot of endeavor for spiritual life, then how can Krishna know he's actually serious? Yes, everything depends on Krishna's mercy, but Krishna is neutral. Also, it's described like a desired tree. So a desired tree is not showing favoritism toward anyone. According to the type of desires you approach the desired tree, then the desired tree gives you a particular type of fruit. So he's not being partial. You want a mango fruit? Okay, give him mango fruit. You want an apple fruit? He gives apple fruit. It has no partiality. So the Supreme Lord is described in many places as a desired tree. So if we don't show any desire to attain Krishna by the proper method, then how can he understand that that's what we want? Right? So then there needs to be, by proper understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, Sambandha Gyan, then there can be abhideya, there can be the pursuit of Krishna. Otherwise, there's no real pursuit. It's just niyamagraha. It's the form without the substance. So I've taken up the rituals of Krishna consciousness, etc., but I don't really see the value of Krishna consciousness, etc. So then what will be the endeavor? It'll just be an external affair. So Krishna will reciprocate, of course, with that affair, that external show, by giving you a lot of external things. He might give you position within an institution, give you followers, and so many other things, but you don't get Krishna. So when Krishna sees the tireless effort of the devotee to attain him, then he can understand, this devotee really wants Krishna consciousness. So then it is described there, his mercy Shakti manifests. In that pastime, there's the there's a lot of things going on in that pastime. And what happens is when Mother Jasoda is trying to bind Krishna, then there's two Shaktis of Krishna that's not allowing her to bind him. One Shakti is called the Satya Sankalpa Shakti, which means Krishna's desires are immediately fulfilled. So he didn't want to be bound. So the Satya Sankalpa Shakti was not allowing her to bind him. And then there was the Vibhuti Shakti also working that made it such that even though she was getting, the rope was stretching for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And then she would try to wrap Krishna's belly, and it was still the width of 2 fingers too short. This is the Vibhuti Shakti, like amazing, because his belly wasn't getting any bigger. It wasn't like he was like getting fat, like the frog in the well story we hear. His belly was staying same size only, and she was rapping, and she's like, what is going on here? She was getting bewildered. And all of her gopi friends were saying, just accept it, you're not going to be able to do it. Krishna wins again, he's so adorable like that. And then, they're getting, attracted in that. And then Mother Jasoda was like, no, I'm going to bind him. At least I'm going to see how much rope it takes, to not work, She's like, at least I'm going to have that determination. It's described in the purport in this way, in the 10th canto. I'm going to at least have the determination to find out how much rope is it going to take before it really doesn't work. And I just have to say, okay, I use all the rope in the whole world and it's still not working. So then, seeing that tireless effort of Mother Jasoda, then it is described that Krishna's Kripa Shakti, which is the king of all potencies, came up. And because it's the king, other potencies have to offer their obeisances, right? Like when Maharaj walks in the room, you offer your obeisances, right? So the Kripa Shakti is described as the king of Krishna's potencies. So when the king came, the Satya Sankalpa Shakti, Vibhuti Shakti had to offer their obeisances. And then that took prominent feature, and then she was able to bind him. So the description we heard is that it's a combination of the Bhakta Nishtha of the devotee, his tireless determination to please Krishna, to attain Krishna. And then when Krishna sees that his king of Shaktis manifest to help us out. So like that. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.